You guys, on my last video, many people commented that the very first legal slave owner in America was a Black person. And I was like, I have seen this comment enough that I will look it up myself. I'm sure that this is completely untrue, but let's see where they're getting this from, where they can feel like they can say such a thing. You guys, I have breaking news from the year 1621. I feel like an idiot. If you already knew this, leave me alone. I'm doing my best. But apparently, I'm going to tell you a story. I literally shook. Anthony Johnson was a slave brought over from Africa. Okay, so what I did know that many people don't know is that Black people were not just, or Africans were not just stolen by Europeans and shipped over to America. They were sold by other Africans. I did know that. A lot of people don't know that. So this was not news to me. But he was sold and he was brought over as an indentured servant, and he was freed because he served his time. An indentured servant serves for a period of time to pay off a debt or to earn their freedom, and then they get to be free. And that was the model that was meant for the Africans in America. Hang with me because this gets crazy. He was an indentured servant himself. He earned his own freedom. He bought land, and then he owned slaves. He was the first, but I'm going to get there. Okay. He owned slaves, Black and white slaves, on his tobacco farm. Are you kidding me? He owned white people? Okay. So he owns white people. And then there's this guy named John Casor. John Casor earns his freedom through indentured servitude because that's the model. And Anthony's like, no, actually, you're my slave for life. I know that nobody's ever heard of this, and this is not the typical model, but you will actually not be earning your freedom, and you will be my slave for life. So he goes to court, and he pleads his case, and he's like, you guys get back to me with a ruling on whether or not I can keep John forever, because I don't really want him to be let go. There are other reasons. There was a neighbor, whatever. It doesn't matter. He's like, he's going to be my slave for life. And the court rules in Anthony's favor. And it's like, we love this for you. Keep him forever. So Anthony Johnson is the first legal slave owner. It's the first legal acknowledgement in English America that an African could be held as a slave for life. And he was owned by a Black man who owned other slaves who were both Black and white. And when they were writing our history books, they were like, we don't need to talk about that. Are you joking? I don't know if I'm being dramatic, but this changes everything.
Every time I bring up slavery, somebody jumps out of the shadows like, did you know Black people owned slaves too? Like, that's supposed to stop the conversation. Like, that's the gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about it. The first recorded Black slave owner in the American colonies was a man named Anthony Johnson. He was taken from Angola in the early 1600s, survived indentured servitude in Virginia, gained his freedom, and eventually owned land, over 250 acres. That's wild, considering the time, right? But here's where it gets twisted. In 1654, Johnson went to court to claim that another Black man, John Casor, owed him a lifetime of labor. And the court sided with him. And just like that, chattel slavery was legally extended. Not by a white man, but by a free Black man. This is the part that people love to throw in your face without a shred of historical nuance. So yeah, Anthony Johnson was the first. And yes, over time, some other free Black people, especially in places like New Orleans and Charleston, they owned and enslaved people too. Sometimes to protect family members from the system, sometimes to gain wealth and proximity to power. And no, hell no, I'm not excusing it. It was betrayal, it was cruel, it was wrong. But I'm also not going to sit here and let you pretend that that canceled out 400 years of white-led genocide. Because here's what you're not going to do. You're not going to erase the fact that 98% of enslaved people were owned, traded, insured, and brutalized by white people. You're not going to pretend that Black people created the boats, the laws, the markets, and the damn system itself. Black participation was a stain, but white supremacy was the blueprint. And let me give you one more twist to that Anthony Johnson story. After he died, Virginia snatched that land back from his family. They claimed that Black people couldn't be citizens. So miss me with that fantasy that owning people bought him safety. The very system that he tried to participate in turned around and ate him whole. So yeah, some Black people tried to mimic the master. But that doesn't make them the architects. It makes them proof of how poisonous that system really was. They weren't trying to build freedom. They were trying not to drown. And in doing so, they passed the chains on. We don't hide the truth over here. But we damn sure won't let you weaponize it either.
And this is actually true. Anthony Johnson was the first black person to actually own slave. This is after working as indentured servant until he earned his freedom. And he actually thrived so well that he acquired land where he planted cotton, and therefore he needed workers. But the story is not actually told because in 1600 slave trade was just like trade, but later the white supremacists turned into superior blacks and superior whites, sorry, and blacks are inferior. It turns into racism rather than the normal trade, because even if you may want to say even black on slave, but what are the reports of how black treated their subject, and what are the reports of white master cruelty, or how they treated the black people? I think that slave trade could not have led to a very large effect if it was not about racism, because so many black people got mistreated. So even if a black there was a black master, because yeah, there's so many black people who actually owned slaves. Actually, Anthony Johnson was just the first one. But this story is not actually told, because once the slavery turned into racism war, they don't want to hear that there was a black person owning both black and white slave. I'm not saying that owning slave it's kind of good thing, but now, because it was the major business at that time, that was the main the main channel of actually creating wealth. I feel that even a black person owning slave by that time shows and actually compromises racism and white supremacy, and that's why you will not hear this kind of story. But I feel that it's a powerful message uh, uh, for those people who feel that for that generation that feels they were inferior, they got enslaved. No, that was just that was actually unfortunate, because the white supremacists changed the whole perspective of seeing slavery as a trade, as something that in an economic point of view, and they turned it into a war between superiors and inferiors. And that's why you find that the white masters actually enforced a lot of brutality because of race, to prove that they are superior, and also erasing so much history. But even if they say that there was a black person who owned slave, and try to say that now both of us were involved. Yeah, I agree. In African kingdom, as that particular time, you know that the culture of Africans, they could not enforce rules, harsh rules, like killing the wrongdoers. So when such an African person did such a mistake, he was actually sent away. And if there was another kingdom that was actually willing to buy him to work for him instead of killing. But if you find that if it was for Western power, they enforced that sentences like killing. But from African culture, we really preserve life, and we would prefer to send someone away instead of ending his life. And that is how slave they try to say that we sold Africans. But even with the slaves who were in African kingdom by that time, they did not. They were just like workers. They were given all those rights. But when you now come to look at the white master and enslavement, 400 years of enslavement by the white supremacists and the Europeans in particular, you will actually find the brutality, inhumane treatment, and that is all that we equal. But it's actually nice history to see that. I feel that it's nice history that at that time a black person was able to work and acquire large land, and also include himself in the thriving business of that day. But I believe that the treatment of that how Anthony Johnson treated the slavers, he did not impose the racism and the brutality that come with it from the white supremacy. So as much as they tried to say even black people and slaves, but the black person did not treat um, the, 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 the slaves the same way the white supremacy treated. And I want to insist here, this is because at that time it was slave trade. But when the white supremacy started imposing their idea, they turned the slaves, the trade, into superior and inferior war. So that's all I got to say. Let me know what you think about this episode. Let me know what you think about Anthony Johnson, the first person to actually own slaves. And by the way, there were so many black person. Um, he was just the first person. There were so many, because in Louisiana by that time there was 40% of slaves were owned by black people. In South Carolina, 43% of slave owners were actually black. In Mississippi, 26% slave owners were black. In Alabama, it was 25%. In Florida, it was 22%. So yeah, not all slave masters were white. Some were brothers running from operation, planting, trading, getting paid. Ever heard of Antonio Dubuclet? By the way, there was another merchant who was black, was called Antonio Dubuclet, one of the richest black men in Louisiana, worth about $9 million in today's money. But now, they only teach you about chains, not bank accounts. And don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. Slavery wasn't a black power moment. It was an economic system. But later, white allies turned that system into racism. They rewrote the rules. Only black means slave. Only white means master. Boom. Instant inferiority, complex imported, and mass produced. And when they say, well, Africans sold their own people, tell them that that is half the story. In Africa, slavery meant a prisoner of war or a criminal being sent off instead of executed. It wasn't built on hate. It wasn't lifelong. But when Europe got involved, they industrialized it. They turned people into profit. And that brutality, that is what they don't want to own up to. So no, we are not glorifying black slave owners. We are exposing how they erased the full picture. Because history didn't make us inferior. It just edited out the parts where we weren't. Anthony Johnson wasn't a symbol of oppression. He was a proof that black power, land, and legal agency existed long before the world decided to strip it away. So next time someone say black people never owned anything, tell them We owned land, wealth, and unfortunately, even people. And that is what makes history so dangerous. The truth doesn't care about your comfort zone. So let's share this video, let them choke on the facts they tried to buy. Until we meet next time, peace, love, and harmony.